I never expected my marriage to unravel in the middle of a crowded dance floor. It was supposed to be a fun night out, something to bring us closer, a break from the usual routine. My wife, Lorraine, had insisted we attend the charity gala her company was hosting. She spent days picking out the perfect dress, excited about the event, and I was just happy to see her enthusiastic about something we could do together. When we arrived at the venue, I immediately felt out of place. The ballroom was filled with people who lived in a different world. Executives, socialites, men in tailored suits laughing too loudly at each other's jokes. I had no reason to feel insecure, but standing there in my standard tuxedo, I realized I didn't quite belong. Lorraine, on the other hand, fit right in. She was in her element, dazzling in a deep blue gown, moving through the room like she owned it. First, everything seemed fine. We mingled, we laughed. She held on to my arm like she always did at these events. But something changed the moment he arrived. Elijah Whitman. I had heard his name before, one of the senior partners at her firm, a man who was a little too smooth for his own good. I had seen the way Lorraine spoke about him, the way she admired his intelligence, but I never thought much of it. After all, we were married. We had built a life together. But that night, the moment he walked in, something shifted. I saw the way Lorraine's posture changed, the way her lips parted slightly when their eyes met. And then, as if I wasn't even standing next to her, she let go of my arm and walked straight to him. I followed, telling myself I was imagining things. I wasn't the jealous type. Maybe I was just reading into nothing. They talked, laughed, sipped their drinks like old friends while I stood there, awkward, waiting to be acknowledged. But I wasn't. I was nothing more than background noise. And then came the dance. The band switched to a slow jazz number. Couples moved on to the dance floor, and I turned to Lorraine, expecting her to reach for my hand. Instead, she turned to him. "Dance with me," she said, her voice soft, almost teasing. I expected him to at least hesitate, to glance at me, acknowledge my presence. But he didn't. He took her hand, led her to the floor, and I stood there, frozen. They danced like they had done it before, like they had a rhythm, a connection. Lorraine looked up at him with a smile I hadn't seen in years. She laughed at something he whispered in her ear, and for the first time in my life, I felt invisible. I tried to tell myself it was just a dance, just a moment, but deep down, I knew something had already broken, and I wasn't sure it could be fixed. And so I did the only thing I could. I walked away. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't pull her aside and demand an explanation. I simply turned, left my half-finished drink on the table, and walked out of the ballroom into the cold night air. And that was the moment Lorraine finally noticed. She came running out after me, calling my name, her voice sharp with panic, but it was too late. She had danced with him like I wasn't even there, and in that moment, I realized maybe I never really was. Lorraine caught up to me just as I reached the curb outside the hotel. Her heels clicked against the pavement as she rushed toward me, breathless, her face filled with something that looked like guilt, maybe even fear. But I wasn't sure if she was afraid of losing me or just scared of how bad this looked. "Wait, just wait a second," she gasped, grabbing my arm. I let her touch me, but I didn't turn around. My chest felt tight, my hands clenched into fists at my sides, but not out of anger, out of sheer disbelief. I had never felt this kind of humiliation before. I wasn't an insecure man. I never believed I had to watch my wife like a hawk or be suspicious of every man she spoke to. But tonight, something was different. It wasn't paranoia. It was real. What the hell was that in there? I finally asked, my voice even controlled. I refused to let her see how much this was unraveling me. Lorraine stepped in front of me, her perfectly curled hair bouncing slightly as she moved. "It was nothing, Malcolm. Just a dance, a stupid dance." I let out a short, humorless laugh, shaking my head. "Just a dance," I repeated. "So you didn't see my face when you left me standing there? You didn't feel my hand reaching for yours before you turned away?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. That told me everything. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my thoughts from spiraling. "You know what? It's fine. If that's how you see it, then I'll just go." I turned toward the valet stand, fishing my ticket from my pocket. I needed space, time to think, but Lorraine wasn't done. She reached for my hand again, gripping it tighter this time. "Please don't leave like this," she pleaded, her voice softer now. "I wasn't thinking. I didn't mean to make you feel invisible." I finished for her. She winced. Good, at least she knew. I shook my head again, the weight of everything pressing down on me. This wasn't just about tonight. It was about something bigger, something I hadn't been willing to face until now. There had been signs. The way she'd been distant lately, the way she'd been more excited about work events than spending time with me, the way she'd stopped looking at me the way she used to. I had ignored them, convinced myself it was just a rough patch. Every couple goes through them, right? But tonight had confirmed what I had been too afraid to admit. She didn't see me the same way anymore. Lorraine swallowed hard, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my wrist. "Malcolm, I love you, you know that." I studied her face. She looked sincere, but sincerity meant nothing if it wasn't backed by action. "Then why did you look at him like that?" I asked quietly. She hesitated. It was the longest second of my life. Then she shook her head, letting out a breath. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. And there it was, the truth. Not a denial, not an excuse, just an admission that she didn't have an answer. I pulled my hand from hers, stepping back. "I need to go," I said, not trusting myself to say anything else. If I stayed, I might say something I'd regret. Lorraine opened her mouth to argue, but for once, she didn't fight me. She just stood there, watching as I walked away. I got in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I didn't drive right away. I sat there staring ahead, my mind racing. I could go home, pretend none of this happened, try to salvage whatever was left. Or I could finally admit to myself that something was broken, and broken things don't fix themselves. I sat in my car for what felt like forever, staring out at the city lights flickering in the distance. The engine idled softly, the only sound in the silence pressing down on me. My mind was a war zone. Memories, doubts, and a bitter taste I couldn't swallow down. Lorraine's face when I walked away, the hesitation in her voice when I asked why, the way her body molded into Elijah's on the dance floor as if I had never existed. It wasn't just the dance. It was what it represented. The moment she let go of my hand and reached for his, something between us shattered. I wasn't a man who lost control easily, but tonight I felt like I was coming apart at the seams. My mind kept replaying it over and over, like a cruel joke I couldn't escape. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my fingers ached. My jaw clenched as my pulse pounded in my ears. I could go home, pretend none of this happened. I could crawl into bed beside my wife, let her whisper another apology, and convince myself it was just a lapse in judgment, a meaningless moment. But I wasn't sure I believed that, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. Instead of going home, I found myself driving aimlessly through the city. The streets were mostly empty, the neon signs of late-night diners and liquor stores glowing against the pavement. I had no destination, no plan. I just knew I couldn't be in that ballroom anymore. I needed to breathe. Somewhere along the way, I ended up at a quiet bar on the outskirts of downtown, the kind of place where no one asks questions. I slid onto a stool, barely acknowledging the bartender as I ordered a drink. "You look like you've had a hell of a night," the guy next to me muttered. I glanced over, seeing an older man nursing a whiskey, his face worn and tired. I gave a half smile, lifting my glass. "Something like that," he chuckled. "Women trouble?" I exhaled slowly, staring down at the amber liquid in my glass. "Yeah, something like that." He nodded as if he'd heard this story 1,000 times before. "Let me guess. You thought everything was fine, and then out of nowhere, she reminded you that you're just another guy in the background." I frowned, caught off guard by how accurate that was. "Pretty much." He swirled his whiskey, staring into it like it held all the answers. "Let me tell you something, kid. Women don't just wake up one day and decide to disrespect you in public. That stuff builds up over time. You just didn't see it happening." I leaned back, his words hitting harder than I wanted to admit. So what do you do? The man gave a bitter smile. That depends. Do you still think she's yours? That question sat heavy between us. I had always believed Lorraine and I were solid, unshakable. But tonight, for the first time, I wasn't sure. I had spent years building a life with her, believing we were a team, but was I the only one still playing for us? I ran a hand over my face. I don't know. The man chuckled again, shaking his head. Then you already have your answer. I finished my drink, letting the burn settle in my chest. Maybe he was right. Maybe this wasn't just about one night. Maybe Lorraine had been slipping away from me for a long time, and I had been too blind to see it. By the time I left the bar, my head was clearer, but my heart was heavier. And for the first time in my marriage, I wasn't sure if going home was the right thing to do. I drove home in silence, the city lights blurring past as I replayed the night over and over in my head. The moment Lorraine let go of my hand, the way she walked to him without a second thought, the way she smiled at him like I was nothing more than an afterthought. It wasn't just the dance. It wasn't even just Elijah. It was the fact that, for the first time, I saw the truth, the kind of truth that doesn't need to be spoken. The way she moved, the way she responded to him, the way she looked through me like I didn't exist. That wasn't the reaction of a woman who had simply made a mistake. That was the reaction of someone who had already let go. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard I thought I might crack the leather. The house was dark except for the glow of a single lamp in the living room. She was waiting for me. I stepped inside, and there she was, sitting on the couch, still in that deep blue dress, but now she looked smaller somehow, like she had deflated. She had a glass of wine in her hands, and when she looked up at me, I saw something flicker across her face. Relief. I didn't say anything, just closed the door behind me and leaned against it, watching her, waiting. You came back, she said softly. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. Did you think I wouldn't? She bit her lip, then set her glass down on the table. I don't know. You didn't answer my calls. You didn't deserve an answer. My voice was calm, too calm, and I could tell it unsettled her. She shifted in her seat, smoothing out an invisible wrinkle in her dress. Malcolm, She hesitated. I could see the battle in her head, the struggle to find the right words, the safe words. I messed up tonight. I wasn't thinking. I pushed off the door and walked toward her, standing just a few feet away. That's not true, I said. You were thinking. You were thinking when you let go of my hand. You were thinking when you walked straight to him. You were thinking when you let him put his hands on you. You just weren't thinking about me. She flinched. Good. At least I wasn't the only one feeling something tonight. I don't. She shook her head, her eyes shining under the dim light. I don't know what you want me to say. I let out a hollow laugh. You don't know what I want you to say? Lorraine, I want to know why. Why did you do it? Why did you look at him like that? Why did you let me stand there like an idiot, watching my wife act like I was nothing? She opened her mouth, but I wasn't done. I want to know how long I've been a ghost in my own marriage. I want to know when you stopped seeing me. Silence. The kind that stretches too long, that presses against your ribs and makes it hard to breathe. Then she exhaled shakily, looking down at her hands. I don't know. I closed my eyes for a second, letting the words settle in my chest. That was the worst answer she could have given me. Not a denial, not even an excuse, just nothing. I turned away, running a hand through my hair. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe I wanted her to break down, to cry, to beg for forgiveness. Maybe I wanted some dramatic confession. But instead, all I got was quiet regret, and somehow that hurt more. I glanced at the stairs, at the darkened hallway leading to our bedroom. It felt foreign now, like it didn't belong to me anymore, like we didn't belong there anymore. Lorraine must have followed my gaze because she spoke again, her voice uncertain. Are you coming to bed? I let out a sleepy, low breath, then looked at her, really looked at her, and I realized something. I didn't want to. I think I need some space, I said, and the words felt final. She sucked in a breath. Malcolm, I'll sleep in the guest room. She didn't fight me, She just nodded, pressing her lips together as if she was trying to keep something from slipping out, maybe an apology, maybe something else. But it didn't matter because, for the first time in my marriage, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to hear it. I didn't sleep that night. Lying in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, I kept replaying the night in my head. The way Lorraine had looked at Elijah, the way she had moved with him, the way I had stood there like a damn fool, watching my own wife slip through my fingers. I felt like a stranger in my own home, in my own marriage. The air in the house felt heavier now, the walls pressing in on me. At some point, I must have dozed off, because when I opened my eyes, it was morning. Light streamed through the blinds in thin, sharp lines, cutting across the unfamiliar bed. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then reality came crashing back, heavier than before. I could hear Lorraine moving around in the kitchen, dishes clinking, the faint sound of coffee brewing, like everything was normal, like last night never happened. I sat up, rubbing a hand over my face. Part of me wanted to stay in this room forever, avoid her, avoid the conversation I knew we were about to have. But I couldn't. If I didn't face this now, I never would. When I stepped into the kitchen, she was standing by the counter, stirring her coffee. She looked up when she heard me, her eyes cautious, as if she wasn't sure what version of me she'd be facing this morning. "Morning," she said quietly. I didn't respond. Instead, I walked to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and leaned against the counter across from her. She shifted on her feet, holding her mug with both hands like it was the only thing keeping her steady. "Did you sleep okay?" she asked after a long pause. I let out a slow breath. "No." Her lips pressed together. "Malcolm." She trailed off, setting her coffee down. "I don't know what you want me to say." I scoffed, shaking my head. "You keep saying that, like you're waiting for me to give you a script. That's not." She sighed, running a hand through her hair. I don't know how to fix this. Maybe you can't." The words came out before I could stop them. They hung between us, heavy and undeniable. Her face crumpled for a second, like she had been punched in the gut, but I wasn't here to comfort her. I set my water down and crossed my arms. "I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. No dodging, no I don't know, just the truth." She nodded slowly. "Okay." I swallowed hard. "Was it just a dance?" She flinched, her fingers tightening around the edge of the counter. She stopped, exhaling sharply. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." I held her gaze, my voice steady. "Is there something between you and Elijah? Something more than work?" Her silence was louder than any answer she could have given. I waited, gave her the chance to prove me wrong, but she didn't. She just looked at me with wide, guilty eyes, her throat bobbing as she struggled to find words that wouldn't make this worse. Finally, she let out a breath. I never cheated on you, Malcolm." That wasn't the answer I was looking for. "That's not what I asked," I said quietly. She looked away, gripping the counter so tightly her knuckles turned white. "I don't know," she whispered. I let out a bitter laugh, pushing off the counter. There it is again, that same answer. I paced a few steps away, running a hand through my hair. "Do you even hear yourself? You don't know? What the hell does that mean, Lorraine? Either you love me or you don't. Either you're faithful or you're not. Either you want this marriage or you don't." She looked up at me, her eyes wet. I do want this." "Then why do I feel like I'm the only one fighting for it?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The silence stretched. I nodded slowly, my chest tight. "That's what I thought." She stepped forward, reaching for me. "Malcolm, please." I stepped back. "I can't do this right now." Her face crumpled, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, grabbing my keys on the way. This time when I left, I wasn't sure if I was coming back. I drove without a destination, my thoughts louder than the hum of the engine. The city blurred past me, a collage of colors and movement that I barely registered. I needed space, distance from Lorraine, from our house, from everything that suddenly felt too small, too suffocating. The weight in my chest hadn't lessened since last night. If anything, it had grown heavier. I had given Lorraine every opportunity to tell me the truth, to say something that would make this make sense. But she hadn't. Instead, she had stood there searching for the right words, like someone trying to pick the least painful way to deliver bad news. And that's what made it worse. It wasn't that she had denied it. It was that she couldn't. I pulled into a quiet parking lot near the waterfront, killing the engine. The air smelled like salt and pavement, the early morning fog rolling over the bay in soft, gray waves. A few joggers passed by, too lost in their routines to notice the man sitting alone in his car, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing tethering him to reality. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. My life, my marriage, had been unraveling right in front of me, and I hadn't seen it. Or maybe I had, but I had been too willing to believe that what we had was stronger than whatever this was. But love isn't enough, is it? I used to think it was. I used to believe that as long as two people loved each other, they could get through anything. But now I wasn't so sure. Lorraine had told me she loved me, but love doesn't make you forget your husband exists while you dance in another man's arms. Love doesn't make you hesitate when your husband asks if there's something going on. Love doesn't make you look lost when you're asked if you're still in it. I ran a hand over my face, forcing myself to take slow breaths. I wasn't going to spiral. I wasn't going to sit here and drown in my own thoughts. I needed clarity, and I knew exactly where to get it. I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolling through my contacts until I found the one name that felt safe. Grant, my best friend since college, the only person who had seen me through every high and every low. He answered on the third ring. Malcolm. His voice was groggy, like I had just woken him up. Man, do you know what time it is? I checked the clock on my dashboard. 7:42 a.m. Yeah, that tracked. I need to talk, I said, skipping the pleasantries. There was a beat of silence, then a sigh. That bad? I swallowed. Yeah. All right. Meet me at the dockyard in 20. I didn't thank him. Grant didn't need that. He knew. When I pulled up to the cafe, he was already there, leaning against his car with a coffee in hand. His hair was messy, his t-shirt wrinkled, but his eyes were sharp as they met mine. He took one look at me and let out a low whistle. Damn, you look like hell. I huffed a laugh, shaking my head. I feel worse. We went inside, grabbing a corner booth away from the morning rush. I didn't wait for small talk. I laid it all out. Last night, Lorraine, Elijah, the way she had hesitated when I asked her the one question that mattered. Grant listened without interrupting, his fingers tapping against his coffee cup. When I finished, he exhaled sharply. Well, damn. I let out a bitter laugh. Yeah. He leaned forward. All right, let's be real. Do you think she cheated? I clenched my jaw. I don't know, but that's the problem, isn't it? I should know. I shouldn't be questioning it. Grant nodded, rubbing his jaw. That hesitation, man. It's not good. I shook my head, frustration bubbling up. She could have denied it. She should have denied it. If it was nothing, why didn't she just say so? Grant sighed. Because, my friend, you don't hesitate when you're innocent. You hesitate when you're trying to figure out how much of the truth you can afford to tell. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I leaned back, dragging a hand down my face. I can't believe this is happening. Listen, man, you got to be smart about this. If you go back and pretend this didn't happen, it's only going to eat away at you. You need the truth one way or another. I stared down at my coffee, my mind racing. He was right. I needed the truth, and I wasn't going to stop until I had it. By the time I left the cafe, my thoughts were razor sharp, cutting through the haze of confusion that had been weighing me down since last night. If there was one thing I knew, it was that uncertainty was a slow poison. It eroded trust, turned love into suspicion, and made every moment feel like walking through a minefield. I wasn't going to live like that. As I drove back toward the house, I made a decision. I was going to find out the truth no matter how ugly it was. No more guessing, no more waiting for Lorraine to hand me a convenient version of it. I needed to see for myself. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked exactly the same as it always had. the curtains drawn, the morning light stretching across the lawn. But something about it felt different now, like it wasn't my home anymore, just a place filled with unanswered questions. Lorraine was in the kitchen again when I walked in, dressed in leggings and an oversized sweater, her hair still slightly damp from a shower. She looked up immediately, her eyes scanning my face. "You left early." I set my keys on the counter, keeping my expression unreadable. "Needed some air." She hesitated, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. "Malcolm, I meant what I said last night. I never cheated on you." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "But you didn't tell me the whole truth, did you?" Her face paled slightly. I don't want another I don't know, Lorraine." I cut her off, my voice steady but firm. "I want the real answer. No more carefully chosen words." Her grip on the coffee mug tightened. "I didn't physically cheat," she admitted after a long pause. "But maybe I let things go too far." A slow exhale left my lungs, but it did nothing to ease the tightness in my chest. "Define too far." She swallowed hard. She hesitated again, closing her eyes for a second before opening them. I let myself enjoy the attention, the way he looked at me, the way he made me feel. There it was, the truth, jagged and raw. I let out a bitter chuckle, shaking my head. "And how exactly did he make you feel?" She shifted uncomfortably. "Wanted," she whispered. "Exciting. Like I wasn't just someone's wife." The words hit like a punch to the gut. "Someone's wife?" I repeated, my voice lower now. "You were someone's wife. Or did you forget that?" She flinched. "Malcolm, it wasn't." "Wasn't what? Real?" "You don't have to sleep with someone for it to be real, Lorraine. You let him have a part of you that was supposed to be mine." Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't interested in comforting her. This wasn't about her pain. "I never meant for it to happen," she whispered. "I swear. It was stupid. It was reckless. But I never would have." I held up a hand. Don't stand there and tell me what you never would have done. You don't know what would have happened if I hadn't been there last night." She looked down, silent, because she knew I was right. I pushed off the counter, exhaling sharply. "You should have told me the first time you felt something for him." She wiped at her eyes. "I thought it would pass, that it was just a phase." "A phase?" I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "You don't have phases in a marriage, Lorraine. You communicate. You don't just let yourself slide into emotional affairs because it's convenient." "I know," she whispered, voice cracking. I ran a hand over my face. "Do you even want this marriage?" She snapped her head up. "Yes, of course I do." "Then why do I feel like I'm the only one fighting for it?" Silence. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. I nodded slowly, the weight of it all settling deep in my bones. "I can't do this anymore, Lorraine." Her breath hitched. "Malcolm, I don't trust you," I said, my voice even. "And without trust, what's left?" Tears slipped down her cheeks, but I didn't stay to watch. I turned and walked away, because this time I wasn't sure if I was coming back. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't scream, curse, or let the anger consume me. I simply walked out because, for the first time in a long time, I felt clarity. The weight I had been carrying, doubt, betrayal, insecurity, was finally lifting. I didn't need any more explanations, any more hesitant half-truths from Lorraine. I had my answer, even if she had been too afraid to say it outright. Our marriage wasn't what it used to be. Maybe it never would be again. But that didn't mean my life was over. I drove aimlessly for a while, my hands relaxed on the wheel, no particular destination in mind. The sky was clear, the morning sun casting a golden glow over the city. It was the kind of day that used to feel full of possibilities, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself believe that maybe it still was. At some point, I ended up back at Grant's place. He took one look at me, then wordlessly handed me a beer before we even sat down. "So," he said, kicking back on his patio chair, "is it over?" I took a slow sip, staring out at the small but well-kept backyard. "I don't know," I admitted. But I think I'm okay with not knowing. Grant nodded as if that was the only answer that made sense. That's progress, man. I exhaled, shaking my head. It's crazy. Yesterday, I thought my entire life was set in stone. I thought Lorraine and I were solid. Now, I don't know what the future looks like. Grant chuckled. Welcome to life, buddy. Nothing ever goes how you expect it to. But that doesn't mean it can't turn out better than you imagined. I thought about that for a long time. For years, I had built my world around my marriage, around Lorraine, around the idea that love was enough. But love alone doesn't sustain a relationship. Trust does. Respect does. And once those start to fade, everything else follows. I wasn't going to beg for a woman who had already let me go, even if she hadn't realized it yet. I wasn't going to cling to something that wasn't real anymore. And I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life wondering if I was just a placeholder in someone else's story. By the time the sun started to set, I felt lighter than I had in years. I wasn't broken. I wasn't defeated. I was just free. And maybe, just maybe, that was the best possible ending after all.